Hello everyone, welcome to another Math 22 lecture video, and today we are going to talk about the polar coordinate system. So before we proceed to the polar coordinate system, let us first recall the coordinate system that we all know, which is the Cartesian coordinate system. The Cartesian coordinate system, or also known as the rectangular coordinate system, assigns a unique ordered pair xy to a point P on the xy plane, where x is the directed distance of P from the y-axis and y is the directed distance of P from the x-axis. So first, let us consider the point O and a ray OK that coincides with the origin and the positive x-axis respectively. So as we look at the diagram, we see O here placed at the origin, and again OK coincides with the positive x-axis. So here, we call O the pole and we call the ray OK as the polar axis. So again, ulitin ko lang kasi mahalaga ito. Yung O, ang tawag dyan kapag Cartesian coordinate system, ang tawag sa kanya ay origin. Pero pagdating natin sa polar coordinate system, ang tawag na sa kanya ay pole. Ito naman, yung positive x-axis, pagdating sa polar coordinate system, ang tawag na sa kanya ay polar axis. Again, hindi na ito origin at hindi na ito positive x-axis pagdating sa polar coordinate system. Okay. So how do we locate points in polar coordinates? So the polar coordinate system assigns an ordered pair r theta to a point P on a plane where we have r, the directed distance of the point P from the pole, and theta is an angle formed from the polar axis to the ray OP. So, pag ganito yung angle. So, that's theta. Okay. So, remark, we let P or theta be a point on the polar plane. If theta is greater than 0, we rotate counterclockwise from the polar axis. Ganito din yung convention natin noon dati sa trigonometry nung inaaral pa natin yung mga trigonometric functions. So if theta is negative, we rotate clockwise from the polar axis. If r is equal to 0, then P is the pole. Bakit yan totoo? Kasi again, R is the distance from the pole to the point P. So ngayon, kung yung distance nila ay 0, edi mapupunta lang talaga yung point P dun sa pole kasi distance 0. If r is greater than 0, then P is located r units from the pole on the terminal side of the angular coordinate theta. If r is negative, then P is located absolute value r units from the pole on the ray, directed opposite of the terminal side of the angular coordinate system. Again, if r is greater than 0, dun tayo sa terminal side of the angular coordinate. Kapag yung r is less than 0 naman, dun tayo sa opposite ng terminal side ng angular coordinate theta. So let us see the examples para makita natin kung ano yung nangyayari. Let us plot the following points. So first one, we have P1, pi over 2. So, ang gagawin mo dyan, pag nagpa-plot ka ng polar coordinate system, titignan mo muna yung iyong angle. Hahanapin mo muna yung terminal side ng angle mo. So, for this case, ang angle natin ay pi over 2. So, again, we start at the polar axis or kung hindi pa sanay dun sa positive x-axis, start tayo dito. Tapos, nasaan yung pi over 2? Di ba? Nandito sa taas. Tama? Okay. Kapag na-locate mo na yung terminal side, titignan mo na ngayon yung R. If R is positive, dito tayo sa direction ng terminal side. So, dahil ang R natin, ay positive 1. So, again, this is our terminal side. Dito tayo kasi positive yung R. Tapos, definition, r is the distance from the pole papunta dun sa point. So, meron niyang distance na 1 unit. So, nandito banda yung ating point P. Yan. So, again, pi over 2, tapos 1 yung distance from the pole to P. So, we have this P as the point 1, comma, pi over 2. Okay. So, next, let us try Q. 3, 3 pi over 4. Ganun ulit. Ang unang gagawin, tignan mo muna natin yung angle. Hanapin natin yung terminal side ng angle na yon. So, 3 pi over 4 ay nasaan? Quadrant 2, no? So, nandito banda yung 3 pi over 4. Tapos, since yung r natin ay positive, ayan, r natin ay positive, so dito tayo sa terminal side. Tapos, 3 units yung igagapang natin. So, we have 1, 2, 3. So, we have Q here. Here is the point Q, 3, 3 pi over 4. So, let's try another one. R, pi over 6. So, pi over 6 is somewhere here. Tapos yung R natin ay negative. So, ibig sabihin, hindi tayo dun sa terminal side. Dun tayo sa opposite nung terminal side. So, kung ito yung terminal side ng pi over 6, dun tayo sa opposite side. So, dito. Dito tayo ngayon magka-count nung absolute value of R, which is 2. So, on this direction, count 2. So, 1, 2. So, dapat nandito banda yung R na point. Let us check. Nandito nga siya. Okay. So, again, this is pi over 6. Pero again, yung r natin ay negative. So, we go the opposite direction. So, nandito dapat yung r natin. Okay. Next, let us have s, negative 1, 3 pi over 2. So, si 3 pi over 2, nasaan siya? So, dito tayo mag-start. 3 pi over 2 ay ito. Okay. Tapos, dahil negative yung ating r, negative yung r, so dun tayo sa opposite nung terminal side. So, this is the terminal side of 3 pi over 2. We go the opposite side. So, dito tayo sa taas. Tapos, count 1 unit. So, 1 unit dapat nandito si S. Okay. So, anong napansin natin? Si P, pareho lang kay S. Pero kung titingnan mo yung kanilang representation, magkaiba. Si P ay 1 over pi over 2. Si S naman ay negative 1, 3 pi over 2. Pero they represent the same point. So, anong makakonclude natin doon? So, the polar representation of a point is not unique. Unlike dun sa Cartesian coordinate system na unique, sa polar coordinate system, hindi unique yung representation ng ating points. Okay. In fact, a point P, r, theta in polar coordinates may also be represented by r, theta plus 2k pi, where k is an element of an integer, or negative r, theta plus 2k plus 1 pi, k element ng integers. Okay, kasi 'di ba umiikot yung angles natin. Yun lang yung representation ng 2k pi diyan kasi umiikot-ikot yung angles. Okay. So, conversion formulas tayo. Ano meron sa conversion formulas? So, we let P be a point with polar coordinates r theta and corresponding Cartesian coordinate xy. So, let us have this representation. So, we have point P here. Kapag polar, ang representation niya, di ba, r theta. Pero kapag Cartesian, ang representation niya ay x, y. Tapos, ito yung x, ito yung y, ito yung r. R is the distance from the pole to P. And theta is the angle from the polar axis papunta dun sa point P. Okay. Anong makikita natin? Triangle lang yan, no? So, ibig sabihin, pwede tayong mag-Pythagorean theorem. So, by the Pythagorean theorem, r squared r here is our hypotenuse. So, therefore, r squared is just equal to x squared plus y squared, and x is equal to r cosine theta, and y is equal to r sine theta. Saan galing to? Si x equals r cosine theta at saka si y equals r sine theta. Saan yan galing? Sa, balik natin, sa SOHCAHTOA lang ha. Kasi 'di ba sa using SOHCAHTOA, cosine theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent side here is x and our hypotenuse is r. So therefore, cosine theta is equal to x over r. Similarly, yung sine naman is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So the opposite side here is y and hypotenuse mo ay r. So kung nakalimutan nyo, ganun lang yung way of thinking. Pwede nyo nang ma-derive. Pero tatlo lang naman yan. Madali naman yung i-memorize. Okay. So to transform a Cartesian coordinates, xy to polar coordinates r, theta, ang gagawin nyo lang, choose r regardless of the sign such that x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared, and solve for the value of theta such that x is equal to r cosine theta and y is equal to r sine theta. So these are the steps to convert Cartesian to polar. Okay. So let's have some example. Find two pairs of polar coordinates for the point with Cartesian coordinates negative square root of 3, 1, one with positive radial coordinate and another with negative radial coordinate. Okay, so how will we do that? So recall that r squared is equal to x squared plus y squared. So therefore, r squared is equal to, again, yung x natin is the first coordinate. So negative square root of 3 squared plus 1 squared, we have 4. So r squared equals 4. So therefore, r is equal to positive 2 or negative 2. So try muna natin yung r equals positive 2. If we take r equals positive 2, ano nang mangyayari? Gamitin natin yung isang equation. X is equal to r cosine theta. So therefore, cosine theta is equal to x over r. X here, yung ating x ay negative square root of 3. So negative square root of 3 over 2. Tapos, yung sine theta naman ay y over r. So, therefore, we have 1/2. So, isip tayo ngayon, ano yung angle na magbibigay sa atin ng ganitong cosine theta tas ganitong sine theta? So, negative yung cosine theta, positive yung sine theta. So, dapat nasa quadrant 2. Okay. Naisip nyo na ba? So, we may take theta equals 5 pi over 6. So, meron ng r, meron ng theta, therefore, meron na tayong representation doon sa ating point, which is 2, 5 pi over 6. So, ito yung polar representation of the point negative square root of 3, 1. So, what if naman we take r equals negative 2? Then, yung cosine theta natin magbabago. Sine lang naman yung magbabago, di ba? Kasi magne-negative yung r. So, we will have positive square root of 3 over 2. Again, that is negative square root of 3 divided by negative 2, kaya naging positive square root of 3 over 2. Similarly, sine theta will be equal to negative 1/2. So, ano yung angle such that cosine of that angle is equal to square root of 3 over 2 and sine of that angle is negative 1/2? Ano kaya? So, positive yung cosine, tapos negative yung sine. So, dapat nasa quadrant 4. Tama ba? Nasa quadrant 4. Tapos, yung instructions, tandaan natin, yung isang hinahanap natin, dapat negative radial coordinate. So, nasa quadrant 4, tapos dapat negative, satisfies this. So, therefore, we may take theta equals, naisip nyo na ba? Isipin nyo muna. Okay na? Sige, negative pi over 6. So, again, meron na tayong r, tapos meron na tayong theta. So, therefore, meron na tayong another polar representation for the given point, which is negative 2, negative pi over 6. Importante yung order ha. Yung order kapag ka-polar representation, dapat r, theta. Okay. Let's have another example. Ito naman from given naman yung ating polar coordinates, hanapin naman natin yung Cartesian coordinates. So recall that x is equal to r cosine theta and y equals r sine theta. Ito lang yung kailangan natin kasi again, hinahanap lang natin yung Cartesian coordinates. Eh, ang Cartesian coordinates, x, y lang. So therefore, plug in lang natin yung ating values dun sa formula. So r, again, is -5 and theta is -pi/3. So therefore, x is equal to -5 cosine -pi/3. So what is the value of cosine -pi/3? That is 1/2. So therefore, we have -5/2. Similarly, y is equal to -5 sine pi/3. So therefore, that is equal to 5 square root of 3/2. Okay, so meron ka ng x, meron ka ng y. Therefore, meron ka ng Cartesian coordinates. Hence, the given point has Cartesian coordinates -5/2, 5 square root of 3/2. Tapos ka na. Mas madali yung mag-convert from polar to Cartesian versus kapag from Cartesian to polar. Okay. Tapos ito, again, walang ibang sagot. Yan lang. Kasi kapag Cartesian coordinates, recall, unique yung representation. Mag-isa lang yan. Okay. Remark, the graph of a polar equation, an equation in the variable r and or theta is a curve on the polar plane consisting of all points r, theta that satisfy the equation. Okay, graph yun na kasi later mag-graph tayo. Graph. Okay. The conversion formulas can be applied to transform equations from polar coordinates to rectangular coordinates and vice versa. So again, tandaan nyo lang, ito lang yung ating conversion formulas. Tatlo lang naman yan, madali lang naman i-memorize. Again, saan to ginagamit? Kapag magko-convert ng polar coordinates to rectangular or vice versa. Okay. So ngayon, tingnan na natin ano ang itsura ng lines sa polar coordinates. Ano itsura ng equation ng lines sa polar coordinates? Kasi 'di ba naalala natin ano itsura ng lines sa Cartesian coordinate system? 'Di ba ang itsura lang noon y equals mx plus b. So parang meron kang general form. So ganun din, hanapin din natin yung parang general form ng lines equation ng lines pagdating naman sa polar coordinates. Pag sinabing polar coordinates, yung variables natin in terms of r and theta. Okay. Unahin natin yung x-axis. Ano nga ba yung x-axis? Yun yung may equation na y equals 0. Okay. Tapos, paano natin hahanapin yung polar coordinates nito? Gamitin lang natin yung conversion formulas kanina. So, we have y equals r sine theta. So again, kapag x-axis y is equal to 0. So plug in lang natin dito, we will have r sine theta equals 0. Okay. Which implies that theta is equal to k pi. 'Di ba kapag product equals to 0, one of them should be 0. Kapag r is 0, we get the, kung naalala nyo, we get the pole. If r is equal to 0, we get the pole. And if sine theta is equal to 0, we get this value. Theta is equal to k pi, where k is an integer or multiples of pi. Paano naman kapag y-axis? So the y-axis has Cartesian equation x equals 0. So ganun ulit, we have x equals r cosine theta. Therefore, we get an equivalent polar equation cosine theta equals 0, which implies that theta is equal to 2k plus 1 pi over 2, where k is an element of an where k is an integer. Ito ano lang to, odd multiples of pi over 2. So, ito na yung equation. Polar equation ng x-axis. Ito naman yung polar equation ng y-axis. Okay. Paano naman kapag non-vertical line that passes through the origin? So, ano yung Cartesian equation niya? Siya ay equal sa y equals mx. Mx lang kasi again, passes through the origin where m is a real number. So since x is equal to r cosine theta and y is equal to r sine theta, we have, plug in lang dun sa formula, again si y, equal siya sa r sine theta. So therefore, we have r sine theta equals m. Yung x, palitan mo lang ng r cosine theta. So we have, which simplifies to, if r is equal to 0, or we have tangent theta equals m. Okay. Since r is equal to 0 represents only the pole or the origin, then tangent theta is equal to m. Okay. That is, theta is equal to some angle. Let us represent that by theta naught for some theta naught element ng real numbers. Okay. Again, si theta naught, isa siyang specific na value ng angle. Si theta naman, variable yan, theta. Okay. So equation of lines in polar coordinates. So a polar equation, theta equals theta naught, where theta naught is an element of r, represents a line through the pole that makes an angle theta naught radians with the polar axis. The vertical line with the Cartesian equation x equals a, where a is not equal to 0, has polar equation, saan kaya equal? R equals A secant theta. O sige, hindi in-explain. Saan to nanggaling? Ano lang yung meron tayo? Ang meron lang tayo ay yung conversion formulas. Tapos x yung alam nating value. So, ganun ulit. Ito lang yung gagamitin natin. Sorry. Ito lang yung gagamitin natin. X equals R cosine theta. Pero yung x natin equal daw sa A. So, papalitan mo lang to ng A. So, meron kang A equals R cosine theta. Divide everything by cosine theta. So, we have A over cosine theta equals R. But A over cosine theta is just equal to A secant theta. Again, dito lang yun galing ha. Napalitan lang yung x ng A. So therefore, again, the vertical line with Cartesian equation x equals A, where A is not 0, has polar equation R equals A secant theta. And ganun din, kapag horizontal line naman, dito ka naman manggagaling. Sorry. Dito ka manggagaling. Y equals R sine theta. Yung y, palitan mo ng b. So, magiging b equals r sine theta. Divide everything by sine theta. So, you have b cosecant theta equals r. So, thus, you have this form. R equals b cosecant theta. Ano na may itsura daw ng circles in polar coordinates? So, consider the Cartesian equation x squared plus y squared equals k squared for some k greater than 0. So, kung maalala natin, this represents a circle of radius k centered at the origin. So, the polar equation is, saan kaya? Ito na, r squared equals k squared. So, therefore, equivalent to r equals k or r equals negative k. Ma'am, saan galing tong r squared equals k squared? Kasi 'di ba, ulit, ano lang meron tayo? Ang meron lang tayo ay yung conversion formulas. Ano yung unang conversion formula? 'Di ba, r squared equals x squared plus y squared. But x squared plus y squared is given to be equal to k squared. Kaya r squared is equal to k squared. Okay? So solving this, you have r equals k or r is equal to negative k. So therefore, a circle with center at the pole has a polar equation r equals k, where k is not equal to 0. And this equation represents a circle with radius k, absolute value k, with center at the pole. The center is traced once as theta varies on theta naught to theta naught plus 2 pi. Okay. Isang ikot lang daw kapag nandito ka sa interval na ito. Kasi kapag hindi mo ni-restrict yung iyong angle, paikot-ikot ka lang, infinite loop yon. So, kailan lang nagtitrace once kapag nandito sa between nitong angles na ito. Okay. Remark the polar equations r equals k and r equals negative k again represent the same circle. Pareho lang sila. Okay. Here, ito example. This is the graph of r equals 3 and this is also the graph of r equals negative 3. Pareho lang. R equals 3. So, ma'am, bakit ganyan yung itsura ng graph? Isipin nyo lang, if theta is equal to 0, ito yung angle mo, no? Tapos, di ba, count ka lang ng 3, 1, 2, 3. Ito yung makukuha mo tong point na ito. Kapag nandito yung angle mo, count ka ng 3, 1, 2, 3, you get this point. Kaya mabubuo talaga yung circle dyan. Okay. In the Cartesian coordinates, constructing lines with equations x equals a and y equals b for varying values of a and b enable us to partition the Cartesian plane into rectangles. So, yan. Yung rectangles. Kaya, di ba tawag sa kanya rectangular coordinate system? Kasi kaya mong gumawa ng rectangles. Similarly, in polar coordinates, by constructing circles r equals k and lines theta equals theta naught for varying values of k and theta naught, the plane is partitioned into polar grids. So, you have this. Kaya kapag nagsasearch ka sa Google ng polar coordinate system, ganito yung makikita yung ah, parang coordinate system. May bilog, tapos may mga lines. Again, yung mga bilog na yun yung mga r equals k. Tapos yung mga lines, those are the representation for your different values of theta or different angles. Okay. Consider the Cartesian equation x minus a quantity squared plus y squared equals a squared. So, consider naman natin yung circles not centered at the origin. Ano itsura yan? Which represent a circle of radius a with center at the point with Cartesian coordinate a, 0. Using conversion formulas again, yun lang kasi yung meron tayong relationship ng Cartesian at saka ng polar. Yung conversion formulas lang natin kanina. Using the conversion formulas, we have x minus a squared plus y squared equals a squared. Expand lang ito para makuha. Bakit in-expand? Para makuha yung x squared plus y squared. Tapos yung x squared plus y squared saan equal? Sa r squared. R squared. So we have r squared minus 2ar cosine theta. Okay. Yung a squared, bakit biglang nawala? Nag-cancel lang yan ha. Cancel. So matitira ito na lang. Tapos yung x squared plus y squared, equal lang yan sa r squared using the conversion formula. So factor out r equals 0. Since r is not equal to 0, you have a product equal to 0. Therefore, one of them must be 0. Pero hindi pwedeng r is equal to 0 kasi if r is equal to 0, we just get the point. Then r minus 2a cosine theta. Then r is equal to 2a cosine theta. So, ito na yung ating formula. Ito importante to. 2a cosine theta. Similarly, the Cartesian equation for x squared plus y minus a squared equals a squared, where a is not 0, which represents a circle of radius absolute value of a, with center at the point with Cartesian coordinate 0, a, has polar equation r equals 2a sine theta. Ayan, importante din yan. For example, let us sketch the graph of r equals 4 cosine theta. Okay, since r is equal to 4 cosine theta, can be written as 2 times 2 cosine theta. It is a circle centered at 2, 0 with radius 2. Tapos, ayan, if we assign values for theta, we have this. If theta is 0, we have r equals 4. Theta is pi over 6, we have 2 square root of 3. If theta is pi over 4, we have 2 square root of 3. If theta is pi over 3, we have 2. If theta is pi over 2, we have 0. And so on. Tapos, i-point plotting mo lang yan. Makukuha natin etong mga points na ito. Okay. Ito kahit hindi na kayo mag-point plotting. Kasi alam nyo na kapag ganito yung form, alam nyo na agad na siya ay circle centered at 2, 0 with radius 2. So, ayan. Ito yung center niya, 2, 0. Tapos, gawa ka na lang ng circle na radius 2. Again, importante na yung ganitong circles ay nag-i-intersect dun sa pole, ha? Yan. Okay. So, nasan yan? Practice lang din ako eh, no? Practice lang din tayo ng point plotting. So, paano mag-point plotting? Una mong titignan ay yung angle para makuha mo yung terminal side. Angle 0. Angle 0 is this one. What is the distance? The distance is 4. So, you count 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get this first point. Next, if theta is pi over 6, theta is pi over 6, the terminal side is here. Ito ba? Parang hindi. Ito pala. Yan. Theta pi over 6, the distance is 2 square root of 3. So, 1, 2, 1, 2, square root of 3. Dito nga tama. Yan, mga 3 point something pala yun. Okay. Theta is pi over 2. This is theta equals pi over 2, terminal side. But r here is 0. So, r is 0, therefore, it is just the pole. So, ito yung point na pi over 2, 0. Terminal side is pi over 2. Pero, r is 0, so therefore, magiging pole lang siya. Okay. Another one, let us sketch the graph of r equals 6 sine theta. So again, 6 sine theta can be written as 2 times 3 sine theta. So therefore, this is just a circle centered at 3, pi over 2 with radius 3. So pwede nyo na ulit i-drawing yung iyong circle. Pero, mag-assign muna tayo ng values ng theta. Okay, we have this one. Ayan, so ito na siya. Ayan na yung circle mo, centered at 3, pi over 2. Ito yung center. Tapos, radius niya ay 3. So, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3. Ayan. Okay. So, tingnan natin. Practice ulit point plotting. So, the angle is 0. This is the angle 0. Pero yung r mo ay 0. Kaya magiging pole lang siya. So, itong point na ito. Tapos, ano pa maganda? Ito maganda, pi over 2. The angle is pi over 2. So, this is the angle pi over 2. Tapos, yung kanyang r ay 6. So, in this direction, we count 6. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We get this point. Yan. So, point plotting ka lang din. So, remark, the circles r equals 2a cosine theta and r equals 2a sine theta are traced exactly once as theta varies on theta naught to theta naught plus pi. Ang sinasabi lang nito, ang isang buong ikot nito, ang period, ano ibig sabihin ng period? Ang period ay pi. Ibig sabihin, after pi, uulit na siya. Ayaw nyo maniwala? Ayan, makikita nyo naman dito sa point plotting eh. Sa 0, 0, nag-start siya dito, tapos iikot siyang ganyan. This is pi over 2. Tapos pagdating mo sa pi, yung r mo magiging 0 na ulit. Babalik ka na ulit doon sa iyong original place. Yun lang yung sinasabi nitong remark na ito. So, yung isang buong ikot, yung sukat, parang yung gaano katagal siya iikot ulit, yung angle nun ay pi. After pi, period ay pi. Okay. Next, symmetry in polar plane. So, para saan to? Symmetries. Para mas madaling mag-graph. Kasi alam mo yung symmetries eh. Minsan, kapag alam mo na yung graph, hindi mo na kailangan mag-compute. Halimbawa, kapag parabola, y equals x squared, alam mo yung graph nun, na payu lang na ganun, alam mong symmetric siya along y-axis. Pero ngayon hindi pa natin alam yung graphs ng mga special equations sa polar plane. Aralin muna natin kung paano mag-compute algebraically, kung paano mag-test ng symmetries. Okay. So how do we test symmetry about the polar axis? So the polar curve is symmetric about the polar axis whenever an equivalent equation is obtained when r, theta is replaced by r comma negative theta or negative r comma pi minus theta. Anong itsura nun, ma'am? Okay. So, ito yung drawing. Halimbawa, ito yung r theta mo. Okay. Anong mangyayari kapag yung theta ay negative theta? 'Di ba you get the opposite side? Tama ba? Isipin niyo pi over 6. Halimbawa, ito yung pi over 6. Nasaan yung negative pi over 6? 'Di ba nandito sa baba? Yan, negative theta, you get this one. Tapos, comma r. So, ayan. Meron kang graph dito, tapos meron ka ding graph dito sa baba. So, therefore, nagiging symmetric siya along the polar axis. Along the polar axis. Okay? Polar axis, again, kung hindi pa sanay, yun lang yung positive x-axis. Ay, nakalimutan ako. Ma'am, ano yung negative r comma pi minus theta? So, yung pi minus theta, nandito yon. Ito yung pi, no? Tapos, minus theta, you get this one. Kasi ito yung theta mo. Minus theta, you get this one. Tapos, pag negative r, di ba, reflected sa opposite ng terminal side, di ba? So, nandito yon. So, similar lang yung point na r negative theta at saka negative r comma pi minus theta. There are instances kasi na hindi mo mako-compute kapag ginamit mo to. Pero mako-compute mo kapag ginamit mo yung kabila. So, medyo tricky kasi kapag polar coordinate system kasi maraming ang representations. So, yan. Ano naman yung symmetry about pi over 2 axis? Ano yung pi over 2 axis? Yun yung y-axis. Okay. Symmetric about the pi over 2 axis whenever an equivalent equation is obtained when r comma theta is replaced by r comma pi minus theta or negative r negative theta. Ayan. So, imagine, again, if this is your r theta, nasaan yung, dito muna tayo, pi minus theta. Pi minus theta, so again, kung ito yung iyong theta, pi is this one, minus theta, ito yon. Okay. So, ito yung r, pi minus theta. Ito. Okay, dito naman tayo sa kabila. Okay. If this is r theta, nasaan yung negative theta? Negative theta ay nandito. Tapos, since negative yung r, you go the opposite direction. So, you get this point here. So, again, yung r, pi minus theta at saka yung negative r, negative theta, pareho lang sila. Kaya lang sinulat yan again pareho kasi there are instances na hindi mo makukuha yung symmetry pag ito yung ginamit mo. Pero makukuha mo yung symmetry kapag yung isa yung ginamit mo. Okay. And last, we have symmetry about the pole. Polar curve is symmetric about the pole whenever an equivalent equation is obtained when r theta is replaced by negative r comma theta or r comma theta plus pi. So again, let us imagine symmetric about the pole is parang symmetric about the origin. Yung two folds kung naalala nyo. Okay. So if this is r theta, nasaan yung theta negative r? Ito yung theta negative r, you go the opposite direction. So, you get this point. Nasaan naman yung pi plus theta? If this is theta, yung pi plus theta, ito yung pi, plus theta, ito yon. Tapos, positive r, you get this point. So, again, similar lang yung dalawang angles, dalawang representation na yan. Pareho lang sila ng nire-represent na point. Okay, so let us have an example. So let us test for the symmetries of the polar curve r squared equals to cosine theta. Okay, so let's have solution. About the polar axis, we have paano nga ulit? Yan. Replace r theta by r negative theta. So we get, again, yung theta, papalitan lang natin ng negative theta. So r squared equals 2 cosine negative theta. Ito medyo tricky. Hindi nga siya tricky eh. Kailangan alam nyo yung pagiging odd and even property ng cosine and sine. So, kapag cosine, even yan, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, cosine negative theta is just equal to cosine theta kasi even nga siya. Yan. Okay, so r squared is equal to 2 cosine theta. So, ayan, magkamukha na sila. Yan, kamukha niya na yung original equation. So, therefore, it is indeed symmetric about the polar axis. Test naman natin yung about pi over 2 axis. So, kapag pi over 2 axis, we will be replacing r theta by r comma pi minus theta, and thus we get this one. O, kung tricky ulit, tricky pa ba? Kung di maalala yung special properties niyan, cos sin na lang natin. Pero that will give us r squared equals negative 2 cosine theta. So, as we can see, pareho ba? Pareho ba ito doon sa original equation? Hindi, kasi yung isa negative, yung isa positive. So, therefore, uh, the obtained equation is not equivalent to the given, the test fails. However, when r theta is replaced by negative r, negative theta, ma'am, saan to nakuha? Saan po yan nakuha? Balikan niyo yung video. Yan yung another method, another way to test for symmetry about pi over 2 axis. Kapag ito yung method na ginawa natin, negative r, negative theta, we get this one. Negative r squared, negative r quantity squared equals to cosine negative theta. Ito, dahil naka-square, magiging r squared lang yan. Tapos again, si cosine theta ay even function, kaya mawawala lang yung negative. So, therefore, we have r squared equals to cosine theta. Yan. Pareho na ba? Oo, parehong-pareho na. Hence, the curve is symmetric about pi over 2 axis. So, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. They represent, itong dalawang to, r comma pi minus 2 at saka negative r, negative theta, they represent the same point. Pero, minsan, yung isa hindi nagwo-work, tas yung isa nagwo-work. This is the best example. Yung r comma pi minus theta hindi nagwo-work, pero yung negative r comma negative theta nagwo-work. So, pag gano'n, ibig sabihin symmetric talaga siya. Symmetric pa rin siya about dun sa pi over 2 axis. Okay. Next, paano naman kapag about the pole? So, pag about the pole, we replace by negative r comma theta, we get this one. Very easy. So, therefore, the curve is symmetric about the pole. Yan, symmetric na siya. Ito yung drawing nung r squared equals 2 cosine theta. Later, ay, makikita nyo ulit to. Lemniscate lang naman yan. Yung r squared equals 2 cosine theta. Pag alam nyo yung drawing, di alam nyo na yung symmetry. Pero ito yung algebraic method, how to test for symmetry. Okay, so remark if a polar curve is symmetric about the two of the three, polar axis, pi over 2 axis pole, then it is symmetric with respect to all three. So kanina, kung alam nyo tong remark na to, symmetric na siya about the polar axis, symmetric na siya sa pi over 2 axis, hindi nyo na kailangan i-compute yung about the pole. Kasi sabi nung remark, kapag symmetric ka na dun sa dalawa, automatic, magfa-follow na yung pangatlo. Okay. And that's it. Ito yung end of slides exercises. Sagutan na lang natin to during the discussion video. And that's it. Yun lang. Bye!